if you look at somebody like Hitler, it's difficult to know what was going on in his mind, but it's possible to imagine if you just look at dictators throughout history that he thought he was doing good, not just for himself, but for the people he believed have value. So one way you can achieve what we consider as evil is by devaluing some group of people. And that could be all group of people. So it could have sort of a narcissistic type of idea that you basically don't care about other human beings. That's one. Envy is different. I mean, maybe they can collaborate together, or even like you mentioned, you can actually enjoy doing bad to others. That's almost like different, because if all it is like narcissism, you disregard, you don't care how others feel, then you can just make cold, calculated, military, almost economic decisions, and you don't care if a million people die here or there. But if you actually enjoy some aspect of that, or there is like a resentment that fuels it, it's not just cold calculation. It's like fueled by some kind of personal or cultural resentment.
I think it's all fueled by that.
You think so?
I think it's all fueled by that. I think the idea that, say, Hitler thought he was doing good, right? It is like, that is such a thin facade that it flies away like a handkerchief in a hurricane, right? That.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. Yeah,
it's built upon, like it says. I'll explain logical lies, right? Because people can build lies upon specious logic, right? So the idea that, okay, I am doing good because I believe that this ethnicity of people is good and this is bad. And now I'm going to do this and I'm going to make the world different and it's going to bring better to the world. And now I'm raising armies and I'm building concentration camps. And I think like this is all in the service of good. I don't think anyone ever thinks that, right? Or they think that, but because they're living in the surface patina, right? Like they're not allowing the hurricane in that blows away the handkerchief and says like, this is all evil, right? I mean, how do you decide that some group of people is good and some is bad? And like, what is it that you take upon yourself to play God or make decisions about the world? And I think what really is going on is that people are not doing that, right? There's something cobbled together to say like, why this is right and this is okay, right? And this is even good, right? But it is all a lie, right? It's a lie that's adorning what I believe is the fact. I believe that what's going on is the gratification of envy inside of the person. And whether someone says, oh, I think this is good and it's okay if a million people die, or I'm going to enjoy that a million people die, I think is the same. I think the enjoyment, the gratification of the orchestrated evil is there, and that it all comes from vulnerability and insecurity. It all comes from deficits in the sense of self.
I'm gonna have to process that. My slow Pentium PC is processing that. So envy underlies all of it. The psychological concept of envy. What is that? I keep putting myself in the mind of Hitler. I guess that has nothing to do. It doesn't have to do with Jews or Slavic people. Does it have to do with specific amorphous other in his mind that he's envious of?
I think it has all to do with him. All to do with him. There's not a love of the people with whom he allied, or even a sense that the people who he persecuted were worse than him. It's all projections out of what was going on inside of him, which was an intense sense of inadequacy, a rage at being someone he perceived as lesser than. That's the difference between, so we can define words in different ways, even within psychology, but let's say we take the definition here of sort of jealousy as being sort of benign, right? The idea that, oh, I might see something that you have that I don't, and I might think, I'd like that. Maybe I'll work harder to get it, right? Or maybe I can't get it. Maybe it's that you're younger than I am. They say, okay, you have that and I don't. I mean, I have other things too. I'm okay anyway. But I might want those things, but it's very benign, the jealousy. I'd like to be younger. I'd like to be richer, whatever it is that we people think, right? But it's just a thought, and it's a thought that can result in strivings or acceptance, right? It's very, very different. It's completely different than envy, which is destructive. It's the thought of, I see something that you have that I don't have, right? And instead of me working for it or accepting that I don't have it, what I like to do then is bring you down, take you down to where I am, and then I'll feel better, right? Because from the perspective of envy, it is all relative.
So is jealousy a kind of is it because he said completely different, but is jealousy potentially like a gateway drug to envy? Like does it like is it a slippery slope?
I think no. I think that jealousy is a natural, just part of the human phenomenon that we go through life, and we see like, oh, I'd like to have that. I think it's probably part of our incentives, right? If if I'm farming and I have one row of crops, and I look over and I see that you're working harder and you have two, and I'd like to have two, that can make me work harder to have two.
You don't think it's a slippery slope from one to the other? To at first you're like, I'd like to work harder, but then you keep failing and the weather sucks and you keep failing and the other person becomes more successful. Plus he's got a new hot wife now. There's a nice tractor. There's the field is all working, and then you get this idea that, you know what, I'm gonna steal all his stuff. I'm gonna murder him. And that, don't you think that's just like a leap
No, I actually
of
think
the same
no.
phenomenon? No.
No, because I think there are things that are in us as humans, right? So the things that just by being human, like we can, for example, feel compassion, right? We can feel interest, right? We can feel jealousy in that benign sense. Like it's all part of just being human. If we start going from, hey, you have more crops than I have, and now it seems like actually I have a better life in a lot of ways than I have, I'm going to kill you. That is not a progression of something benign, right? That is.
But wait a minute. But that is a human leap of the same thing, isn't it? Because you're drawing a line, stuff. You're saying like this human stuff, this regular life, it's benign, but it feels like this benign thing is just a low magnitude thing version of the thing that's not benign. Like there's probably a gray area where it stops being benign. Like jealousy, you can have like healthy jealousy. You can have a little bit slightly unhealthy. That's I think Jealous Guy, this John Lennon song that I love, is just beautiful. I mean, there's like this jealousy inside relationships can make you feel like could take your minds in all kinds of silly directions, and it's crazy. But like it feels like that's a next door neighbor to like being really crazy and toxic and all that kind of stuff inside relationships. And then that feels like a next door neighbor. It's like an apartment building. That feels like a next door neighbor that eventually gets to Hitler with envy and resentment of an entire population of people.
You're right in that there's a causal.
Yeah.
There can be a causal chain, right? Like if I'm not feeling jealous, maybe I won't ever feel envious, right? So you can see, okay, so it can kind of it can open gates to, how much do I dislike that you have things that I don't have, right? So yes, in that sense, and I think this is the part that I think is so important, that I think there is a disjunction, right? There's an asymptotic shift, right, from one thing to another, because
now you're speaking my language mathematically.
Yeah.
Asymptotic leap. Yep.
Yes, it's a way to convey, right, something that's entirely different. Because if I start thinking, I'm not going to try and make things better, right? I'd like instead to harm you. That's qualitatively different.
Oh, it's almost like, you know what it is? It could be, I don't know what you think about this, but it's in which direction your motivation is pointing. So if in the response to the feeling of jealousy, your sort of the motivation says, okay, I understand this feeling, I want to do less of it. I think there must be a threshold to which you actually want to do more of it. Like it becomes a vicious downward cycle. So that's what envy becomes. Like the first feeling, this idea that I'm going to kill the farmer, right, turns into like more and more and more, and you can't sleep, and you're visualizing the farmer, and it becomes the devil, and like you have this very, it's basically a thing that builds into the negative direction versus returns to the stable center.
Yeah, now a person is cultivating evil.
Yeah.
Right? They're saying, hey, there can be seeds of evil in all of us. Let me take that seed out, dust it off, plant it, nurture it, right? And then grow that seed of evil, which will affect all other parts of the person's life, right? They won't behave the same towards others in their life. They'll become different as they nurture fantasies of evil, as they begin to create inside of themselves the motivation and the will, right, to enact evil. Right? I mean, the Hitler analogy would say, look, you take someone who had a bad childhood, right, who like was not loved, who was taught and told that he was less than. Okay, like that we know that happens. I mean, that's why child abuse is so evil, right? It's telling children the worst possible wrong lessons, right? They're not good enough. They'll always be hurt. They can't keep themselves safe. They don't deserve safety, right? So then you take someone who then nurtures that seed of evil, which is a choice. And says, well, I can't paint well enough and no one appreciates me and I don't like how I look and I don't fit in with the people I want to fit in with. And then, and on and on and on and on and on. And there's a hatred of self through that lens of misery, of just being repulsed by the self. But that's unacceptable to the self. So, it has to be someone else's fault, right? It's not my fault. Whose fault is it, right? And then you see en masse the inaction of evil towards groups of people who somehow in this person's mind, right, are responsible for his misery. And there's the justification of evil. And then all the, whether it's this will be better for the economy, this will be good, this will be that, like that's all lies built to justify the evil.
Those are surface level narratives.
Yes.
And the envy is the deep down mechanism that enables.
And that's the endpoint that's being served. What's being served is destruction, right? Which is why it always brings more destruction, right? I mean, how many times do wars that were started for purposes that we would look and say, like, those were evil purposes? Like, how many times does good come of that? Even we look at the modern world, what comes of it is more evil, is more destruction. Hitler's outward destruction eventually came inward, and you see pictures of what Berlin looked like after the Second World War, right? It wasn't just destruction perpetrated outward, as awful as that is. It's catchy, right? Like people used to worry if during the time of the Manhattan Project, right? If you start this chain reaction, will you blow the whole world up, right? Or will it stop within this bomb or not? And we see, okay, the chain reaction of evil hasn't yet blown the whole world up, but look at how the catastrophe spreads. You think 50 to 60 million people dead in the Second World War, which truly was a world war. What destruction was spread around the globe?
And this is something that can't be stopped once the chain reaction starts. Like if Hitler was successful, like it would just keep going.
If he had been, think about it,
on his personal psychological level, I mean.
Right, because if we think from the perspective of destruction, success would have led to the need to conquer more. Then there's factions and infighting, and then eventually you get the same mass destruction, right? And never does the inaction of evil satisfy what the person is initially seeking. Like people want to feel better about themselves, right? Like Winnicott, who was a British pediatrician who wrote about children and adults from very deep perspectives. He wrote about the idea of good enough, right? And you can sort of extrapolate that to like, we all want to feel good enough, like not just limp over the line good enough, but I want to feel good enough that I'm a decent person in the world and like what I do matters. And I can have an impact on people, and people can like me and care about me. There's a simplicity there that people want that when people don't have, and there's certain other factors, maybe they're temperamental factors or historical factors, can lead to trying to soothe that deficit, right, through envy. And I think it starts with that, and it often starts in childhood. Not always, but it often starts in childhood when the child's brain and psychology are so vulnerable, and you see salient child abuse. If you look at what was Hitler's background and what was Stalin's background, and I mean you could look at almost anyone who's perpetrated evil, whether they're serial killers or whatever it may be. The majority, not everyone, but the majority had these lessons in childhood that said you're not good enough, you can't keep yourself safe, no one cares about you, and in a subset of people, that's going to generate envy, and that seed of evil then gets planted and nurtured. As a fighter jet roars above us.
The sound of a fighter jet above us.
It's been good if I had orchestrated
that. You quickly forget the comfort of being in a peaceful place. That's one thing I saw in Ukraine. Is hey, you quickly get comfortable here. The whole trip back, I was thinking, it's so damn good to be in America. The whole like it's like a 3-day trip back. It's so good to be American.
We might take that for granted as a population, but I do agree.
So the destruction never alleviates the envy. Are all humans capable of envy?
I believe the answer is yes. If you think, do we all have the possibility of evil in us? I think the answer to that is yes. But we have free will, we have choice. We can choose what we do with that, which is why just because someone is a sociopath, for example, it doesn't mean that they're not responsible. I mean, our medical legal jurisprudence, right, has absolutely borne that out. That legally, medically, we think, okay, if we're responsible, presuming we're healthy, we're not unhealthy in other ways that eliminates our ability to be circumspect, but that we're responsible for what we do and don't nurture inside of us. I mean, there are plenty of things we could decide to nurture anger and hatred about. I could think of slights, difficulties, whether it's something someone else has done to me, or I could blame fate, or I could be mad at God or the world. We can all make those choices, and we're responsible for them, or for recognizing things in us that are like, oh, I too have that in me, but I don't want to nurture that. I don't want to foster that. Or do I choose to nurture and foster that? And I think ultimately, a subject of Hitler as evil, if Hitler had kept winning and winning, right, I think ultimately he would have been the only person on earth, right? And I really do believe that ultimately everyone, everything else would be killed because it's such destruction, right? Destroy everything, right? And probably when that didn't work, then there's the destruction of the self, right? Because nothing soothes envy that is stoked by the sort of flames of evil. And what you see is more and more anger and more frustration, which is why I really do believe someone like that, who nurtured evil in themselves that way, ultimately would destroy. They'd be like him and one other person, then he'd kill the other person.
I think that's really powerfully said. But even just to return to the jealousy versus envy, I still think that it's the same flame.
Uh-huh.
And envy is just the bigger version of it. So I think I just, in my own personal life, I've felt jealousy towards others. Like you said, like, oh, this person has I don't know, a cooler thing, trinket, whatever trinket I cared about. And usually it's when somebody's really close to the trinket you're building. uh, and I early on, like in my teens, I realized that just empirically speaking, that jealousy over a period of a week just doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not productive. It doesn't help me build a better trinket. Or it does if I turn it not into jealousy towards another person, but into a love for building a better trinket. It's like, oh, cool. Almost, you know what, like proactively speaking, and later in life, like people like Joe Rogan actually have been really powerful in this for me, just as a fan of his, to celebrate other people. So it's almost as opposed to ignoring that other person with a cool trinket, it's like celebrating their awesomeness in my mind.
Yes.
Like just saying how awesome that humans are able to do that. And actually just how awesome is that exact person at being able to do that.
Yeah.
And that somehow made me more capable to build my own trinket better.
Yes.
And it feels good also. Happy, like it
Yes.
makes me feel happy.
And now you're not jealous anymore.
You're not jealous anymore.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's why I think jealousy is different, right? Because you're saying there's a week of jealousy, like, I don't like this, right? I don't like, but if you take that in a way that says, wait a second, actually, this is awesome. This is fabulous. And this person did this. That person's awesome, right? Then what you're not raining on anyone's parade, right? And in not doing that, even inside your own mind, you gain a greater cognizance of your own capability, right? Well, if he can do that or she can do that, why can't I too? Like I want to make the better trinket too, right?
Yeah.
Now you're thinking creatively. Nowhere in there was the emergence of evil.
I just disagree with that. I think there was a choice made where I looked at if my life was darker, more difficult, I think it has nothing to do with the actual little flame of jealousy I felt. I think it has to do a lot more with the other context. If my life were more difficult, there was more abuse, there was more challenges, I think that decision, I could have made that decision in a different direction.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know, yeah, you've written brilliantly about trauma. If there's a bit more trauma as the background noise of my decision making, I would be more likely to not be able to pull away from the gravitational field of that jealousy, and it would build and build and build and build. So I think, not to disagree with a
This is
brilliant
good.
person, but like I feel like
Philosophical.
that flame has the capacity to engulf the whole world. I guess the initial flame of jealousy, the little bit, like especially the younger you are, it's almost like a habit that you get to build in either direction. Because I've early on built a habit of saying I'm going to channel that jealousy into productivity and into celebrating other people, and that jealousy disappears. That was like a little discovery for me. I discovered
Right.
that. I get it. That doesn't come. Nobody tells that to you. You kind of discover that little thing. I could have easily not discovered it. I could have easily discovered that it kind of feels good to like mess with that other person, to like think shitty thoughts, think negative thoughts, do negative things to that other person, because that could also. I just think the capacity in that initial feeling is there, and I think it's a decision we make, because like otherwise, I think it dissolves responsibility. Like, well, surely I'm not Hitler, therefore this jealousy is normal. No, I just feel like every jealousy has the capacity to turn into maybe not Hitler, but a toxicity that destroys in a small way in your own little private life, but it
Right.
could destroy.
I agree that jealousy can bring us dangerously close to envy. I mean, maybe let's see if a heuristic we could agree on, right?
Yes.
Let's see. So let's say, okay, if we look at the terrain of the mind as geography, right? So if I'm feeling happy, satisfied, proud, like I'm pretty far from envy land, right? Right. But if I'm feeling jealousy now, I'm coming kind of closer to that border,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's a big thing to go over the border, right?
Sure.
That the border isn't a gray area, right? There's a border to go over. And I think that I agree completely. One, certainly about trauma, that the more trauma there is, because then the more misunderstandings there are about self and feelings that I'm not good enough. And then that can be anger about why and who might be oppressing me. And, I hate myself and everyone else who seems to be better. Like, so the trauma can drive us in these negative directions, but we're still crossing over something, right?
Yeah.
So if you have the trinket and I think that's awesome, I want that, I want to work harder. You know what I could do though is I could sneak in tonight when no one's around and I could move something. Right? No, wait, I don't want to do that, right? But it's like I came over the border a little bit and I thought maybe that's a better way, but then I came back. Right. And we're responsible for that. Right. Because it is a choice to say, I don't want to work hard. I'm already working how hard. I don't want to make my trinket better. I want to think mine's the best one. I could destroy yours, right? Then, we're letting our mind go over that border. And do we say, right, run that forward, right? Let's run that forward and put people around us who feel the same way and start doing it so we think less of ourselves and we debase ourselves. Do we run headlong in, or do we come over that boundary? And that's maybe the capacity for evil in us, that we come over that boundary, all of us, right, at times. But do we come over it and then say, no, that's not my choice. That's not my self-definition.
Yeah.
I'm coming back.
But I'm trying to justify maybe there's certain other sociological forces that help us cross the border too. So in Nazi Germany, we've been talking about Hitler, but then there's also the German people.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe when there's a bit of a mass hysteria, so all these effects of like combination of propaganda with the small jealousies and resentments of the people that don't cross the border, together they can. With great charismatic leaders that sort of really fuel that fire that we feel when we're part of the crowd. So maybe those individual kind of psychological barriers we have to take that leap from jealousy to envy, those can be made easier. The leap can be catalyzed through this massive
100%. 100%. I think that to me is a massive point. We're talking about layers of emergence, right? Yeah. So if there's individual consciousness, then there's culture, right? And we're products of the soup we swim in, so to speak. People would say that when I was growing up, right? We're products of the soup we swim in. So if the soup that we're swimming in is the soup of hatred, right? Then it's going to foster all of those things. So then you think about, just in a painting with a very broad brush, the culture created in Germany prior to the Second World War, and like what was the impact of the reparations after the First World War, right? Of the punishing reparations, impoverishment, and and basically humiliation, right? That people were feeling. Okay, like there were a whole bunch of decisions that impacted that cultural perspective, right? Then there must have been aspects, just like I see in many ways parallels in America now, of what are our standards for what we're communicating to others, right? How is the media deciding like what's real and what's not real, what's true, what's not true, what's hatred that is only going to do evil versus what's hatred that's okay because I might sell something by putting it out there. I mean, we know that was going on in Germany during the rise of the Nazis, and I think there's a parallel to do we value truth? Can we stand together and say no matter how much I might disagree with you politically, right? We can still understand like that there's right and there's wrong, right? There's truth and there's lies, right? So I think those are just two examples of determinants of culture, and then the culture is a determinant of is someone like Hitler marginalized as like that's a crazy evil person. Oh my goodness, like whoa, right? Or is that someone who gains a greater following and more adherence, and then there starts to be a momentum because why? Because what do demagogues do? I think they have a giant lasso and they harness the envy of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. That's right. You feel worse about yourself too? Doesn't matter what the reasons are. Maybe it's your childhood. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's job failings. Maybe it's professional. Maybe it's personal. Doesn't matter. Like you have envy too. Let's put it together and do some destruction because that'll make us feel better, which is a lie.